explosion produced protons, neutrons, and electrons, which flowed outward in incredible speed and throughout empty space, for there was no other matter in the universe. As these protons, neutrons, and electrons hurled themselves outward at supersonic speed, they are said to have formed themselves into typical atomic structures of mutually orbiting hydrogen and helium atoms. Gradually, the outward racing atoms are said to have begun circling one another, producing gas clouds which then pushed together into stars. These first stars only contained lighter elements, hydrogen, helium, then all of the stars repeatedly exploded. It took at least 2 explosions of each star to produce our elements. Gamow described it in the scientific terms: in violation of physical law, emptiness fled from the vacuum of space and rushed into a super-dense core that had a density of 1094 gm-cm2 and a temperature in excess of 1039 degrees absolute. That is a lot of density and heat for a gigantic pile of nothingness, especially when we realize that it's impossible for nothing to get hot. Although air gets hot, air is matter, not an absence of it. Where did this super-dense core come from? Gamow solemnly came up with a scientific answer for this. He said it came as a result of the big squeeze, when the emptiness made up its mind to crowd together. Then, with true scientific aplomb, he named this solid core of nothing Yalem, pronounced Elum. With a name like that, many people thought this must be a great scientific truth of some kind. In addition, numbers were provided to add an additional scientific flair. This remarkable lack of anything was said by Gamow to have a density of 10 to the 145 power g-cc, or 100 trillion times the density of water. Then all that packed into blankness went boom. Let's take it point by point. That is the theory. It all sounds simple, just as you would find in a science fiction novel. And that is it. The theory stands in clear violation of physical laws, celestial mechanics, and common sense. Here are a number of scientific reasons why the Big Bang Theory is unworkable and fallacious. Number 1. The Big Bang Theory is based on theoretical extremes. It may look good in math calculation, but it can't actually happen. A tiny bit of nothing packed so tightly together that it blew up and produced all the matter in the universe. Seriously now, this is a fairy tale. It is a bunch of armchair calculations and nothing else. It is easy to theorize on paper. Big Bang is a theoretical extreme, just as is a black hole. It is easy to theorize that something is true when it has never been seen and there is no definite evidence that it exists or ever happened. But let us not mistake Disneyland theories for science. Nothingness cannot pack together. It would have now no way to push itself into a pile. 2. A vacuum has no density. It is said that nothingness got very dense and that it is why it exploded. But a total vacuum is the opposite of total density. There would be no ignition to explode nothingness, no fire, no match. It could not be a chemical explosion, for no chemicals existed. It could not be a nuclear explosion, for there are no atoms. There is no way to expand it. How can you expand what isn't there? Even that magical vacuum could somehow be pulled together by gravity. What would then cause the pile of emptiness to push outward? The gravity which brought it together would keep expanding. 6. Nothingness cannot produce heat. The intense heat caused by the exploding nothingness is said to have changed the nothingness into protons, neutrons, and electrons. First, an empty vacuum in the extreme cold of outer space cannot get hot by itself. Second, an empty void cannot magically change itself into matter. Third, there cannot be heat without energy source. 7. The calculations are too exacting. Too perfect an explosion would be required. On many points, the theoretical mathematical calculations need to turn a Big Bang into stars and our planets cannot be worked out. In others, they are too exacting. Knowledgeable scientists call them too perfect. Mathematical limitations would have to be met, which would be next to impossible to achieve. The limits for success are simply too narrow. Most aspects of the theory are impossible, and some require parameters that would require miracles to fulfill. One example of this is the expansion of the original fireball from the Big Bang, which they placed precisely within the narrowest limits. An evolution astronomer, R.H. Dick, says it well. If the fireball had expanded only 1% faster, the present rate of expansion would have been 3-10 times as great. Had the initial expansion rate been 0.1% less, the universe would have expanded to only 3 times 10 in the power of the 6 of its present radiance before collapsing. At this maximum radius, the density of ordinary matter would have been 10 to the 12 GRM-M3 over 10 to the 16 times as great as the present mass density. No stars could have formed in such a universe, for it would not have existed long enough to form stars. R.H. Stickney, Gravitation of the Universe, 1969, page 62. Such an equation would have produced not a universe but a whole. Roger L. D. Peter in 1974 developed a complicated mathematical equation that showed that the theorized Big Bang could not have exploded outward into hydrogen and helium. In reality, St. Peter says that theoretical explosion, if one could possibly take place, would fall back on itself and make a theoretical black hole. This means that one imaginary object would swallow another one there. 9. There is not enough antimatter in the universe. This is a big problem for the theorists. The original Big Bang would have produced equal amounts of positive matter and negative matter, or antimatter, but only small amounts of antimatter exist. There should be as much antimatter as matter if the Big Bang was true. Quote, since matter and antimatter are equivalent in all respects but that of electromagnetic charge oppositeness, any force the Big Bang that would create one should have to create the other, and the universe should be made of equal quantities each. This is a dilemma. Theory tells us there should be antimatter out there, and observation refuses to back it up. Isaac Asimov, Asimov's News Guide to Science, page 343. We're pretty sure from our observations that the universe today contains matter, but very little, if any, antimatter. Victor Weisskopf of The Origin of the Universe, American scientist, 71, page 479. 10. The antimatter from the Big Bang would have destroyed all the regular matter. This fact is well known to physicists. As soon as the two are produced in the laboratory, they instantly come together and annihilate one another. We have mentioned 10 reasons why matter would not be made by a supposed Big Bang, but now we will discuss what would happen if it actually had. Number 1, there is no way to unite the particles. As the particles rush outward from the central explosion, they would keep getting farther and farther apart from one another. 2, outer space is frictionless and there would be no way to slow the particles. The Big Bang is postulated on a totally empty space devoid of all matter, in which a single explosion fills it with outward flowing matter. There would be no way those particles would ever slow. 3, the particles would maintain the same vector speed and direction forever. Assuming the particles were moving outward through totally empty space, there is no way they would change direction. They could not get together and begin circling one another. 4, there is no way to slow the particles. They are traveling at supersonic speed, and every kilometer would separate them farther from one another. 5, there is no way to change the direction of even one particle. They would keep racing on forever, never slowing, never changing direction. There is no way to get the particles to form into atoms or clusters into Gaussian clouds. Angular momentum, turning motion would be needed, and the laws of physics could not produce it. 6, how could their atomic structures originate? Atoms, even hydrogen and helium, have complex structures. There is no way that outward shooting particles continually separated farther from each other as they travel could arrange themselves into atomic structures. We will now assume that, contrary to physical laws, the particles magically did manage to move towards one another together, and the particles could slow down and change direction. The particles changed direction and formed gas clouds. The theory: gradually the outward racing particles are said to have begun circling one another, forming atoms. These atoms then changed direction further, this time towards another, and formed gas clouds, which then pushed together into stars. This aspect of the stellar evolution theory is as strange as that which preceded it. Gas molecules in outer space are widely separated by gas. We mean atoms of hydrogen or helium which are separated from one another. All gas in outer space has a density so rarefied that it is far less than the emptiness atmospheric vacuum pressure bottle in any laboratory in the world. Gas in outer space is rarer, less dense, atoms are more separated than anything on Earth. 2. Neither hydrogen nor helium in outer space would clump together. In fact, there is no gas on Earth that clumps together either. Gas pushes apart, it does not push together. Separated atoms of hydrogen and helium would be less likely to clump together in outer space. We will now assume that the outward moving, extremely fast, ever-separating atoms shot out by the Big Bang explosion could slow, change direction and form themselves into immense clouds. Gas clouds push themselves into stars. Because gas in outer space does not clump, the gas could not build enough mutual gravity to get together. And if it cannot clump together, it cannot form itself into stars. The idea of gas pushing itself together in outer space to form stars is more scienceless fiction. Fog, whether on Earth or in space, cannot push together into balls. Once together, a star maintains its gravity quite well, but there is no way for nature to produce one. Getting it together in the first place is the problem. Gas floating in a vacuum cannot form itself into stars. Once a star exists, it will be absorbed gas into it by gravitational attraction. But before the star exists, gas will not push itself together and form a star or a planet or anything else, since both by hydrogen and helium are gases. They are good at spreading out, but not at clumping together. 2. Careful analysis has revealed that there is not enough matter in gas clouds to produce stars. There would not be enough time for the gas to reach currently known expanse of the universe, so it could form itself into stars. Evolutionists tell us that the Big Bang occurred 10 billion years ago, and stars were formed 5 billion years later. They only allow about 2.5 billion years for it to clump together into stars. Their dating problem has been caused by the discovery of supposedly faraway quasars, which we will discuss later, some of which are dated at 15 billion light years, since they have a redshift of 400%. That would make them 15 billion years old, which is too old to accommodate the theory. It doesn't take a nuclear scientist to figure out that the math in this paragraph. Simple arithmetic will tell you there's not enough